Why has everything been in shambles since the year 2020 when the pandemic kicked off? Well, we were heading into a special season in God's prophetic timetable because the Antichrist, Pope Francis, was going to sign a 7-year covenant in 2020. The pandemic kicked off and it had to get pushed back to 2021. Now, why is that important? Because Israel turned 73 in May of 2021. And so coincidentally, the Vatican, the little horn, and the head of that institution, the Pope, the Antichrist, not a Antichrist, but the one and only 8th king of Revelation 17, the lawless one, the son of perdition, the Antichrist, signs a 7-year covenant. That same year, on that same month, Psalms 90 verse 10 says, the days of our lives are 70 years. And if by reason of strength they are 80 years, yet their boast is only labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. 7 years from Pope Francis signing the 7-year covenant with many puts us at 2028, the end of Daniel's 70th week. Israel was reestablished as a nation back in May 14th, 1948. And just how Psalms 90 verse 10 tells us 70 to 80 years, 80 years from 1948 is so coincidentally 2028. The same year, the 7-year covenant from the Vatican is up. If you haven't seen Messiah 2028 from Babylon to America, I'll link it below. Make sure to check it out. It'll be a blessing of biblical truth. It's an 85-minute long Bible study prophecy movie. Also, check out this website, 2028end.com. The same year in 2021 that the 7-year covenant is signed with many, news starts circulating of a one world religion center. Apparently there's 3 buildings there, a mosque, a synagogue, and a church. And it turns out that Pope Francis is the one that is funding this, and he's the head of this. He's in charge of the One World Religion Center. The same year he signed the 7-year covenant with many. This facility is already done, and they're up and running, and they're doing services and everything. And this is an interesting place that Pope Francis chose to have this built, because it's built in Abu Dhabi, where it's illegal to become a Christian. You can leave your other religions and go to other religions, but if you're gonna leave to go to Christianity, that's illegal and you can be killed. Now, these are some notable events that have been taking place since 2020, the pandemic, and 2021 in the signing of the 7-year covenant with many. I believe it was the following year, sometime in 2022, they found 5 red heifers in Texas. The Jews believe sacrificing these to God to appease him for sin is going to help usher in the return of the Messiah. We know that's false. We know the Messiah is Jesus. And now there's reports saying that April 2024, they're probably going to be sacrificed. I've seen other reports saying no, that it's not going to happen. They're pushing it back to later in the year. I've seen other reports saying it's going to happen April 2024. We'll just have to wait and see. And we know this past Resurrection Sunday, Biden passed a transgender visibility law, and New York was on board with this, and they had 13 different landmarks lit up in, I think it was light blue, pink, and white to help honor and support this. A couple days go by, April 3rd, and I don't know if the Statue of Liberty was actually struck or if it struck near it, but lightning bolt came down and almost hit the Statue of Liberty. Then 2 days later, April 5th, 2024, we get a 4.8 magnitude earthquake that rattles New York all the way down to New Jersey. Now, 3 days later, on April 8th, 2024, we're getting a total solar eclipse over the United States. The eclipse over the United States is apparently going over Jonah, Texas, Nineveh, Texas, Rapture, Indiana, Nineveh, Indiana, Nineveh, Ohio, Nineveh, Pennsylvania, and Nineveh, New York, and Nineveh, Nova Scotia. And apparently also passing by an art museum in Williamston, Kentucky. This is forming an X over the United States of America, which we know is the second beast of Revelation 13. So this is no coincidence. This is a sign and a warning from God, not calling just America to repentance and back to biblical obedience, but the entire world. If you guys follow my page, you know that I am preaching that in 2025, we're going to see the enforcement of the mark of the beast, a Sunday law from the second beast, the United States of America, on behalf of the first beast, the Vatican. We know the Sunday law started with Emperor Constantine. Like Ecclesiastes chapter 1 tells us, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything's just going to repeat itself. And God's people, Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, are destroyed for a lack of knowledge and not keeping his commandments. So there's no coincidence that we're now seeing Rome erect an 11-meter tall statue of Emperor Constantine to honor him. Now the European Sunday Alliance is in full swing with Pope Francis pulling all the strings, where they're calling the world to come together for a day of rest for whatever reasons they have. Some declare it's the Lord's Day, others just declare it's a good day for everybody to default to take for rest. Whatever the reason is, and their reason for supporting the Sunday law will be coming. Buying and selling will be restricted on a global scale eventually. Now remember, all this is happening after the 7-year covenant was signed by the Antichrist Pope Francis in 2021. So in 2022, they had a meeting somewhere in Egypt where they believe, I guess Mount Sinai is at or whatever, and he had all the world religious leaders there, and they were passing something that he called the new 10 commandments that the world has to now follow. And they have their own Sabbath in there, and it's going to be their day that they're going to choose. Sunday, not the Sabbath of the Lord's Day, the 4th commandment, which we know today as Saturday, according to Genesis chapter 2. This is just more random information. This is the seat that Pope Francis sits in, and the Vatican declares that this is Jesus coming out of a nuclear explosion. I don't know about you guys, but this looks demonic. So I don't remember if this was in 2023 or 2022. There's so much going on. But in New York, they put up this statue of like this demonic looking woman with tentacles coming out of her hands. And I guess it was supposed to symbolize women empowerment and like pro-rights for abortion and stuff like that. This was at the end of last year, November 6, 2023. Global faith leaders call for urgent action on climate change. Pope Francis is the head of all of this, and he's convinced everybody that a Sunday law, I guess, is a solution to help with the emissions on a global scale. In the 7-year covenant that was signed with many by the Antichrist, it's called Laudato Si. Page 237 states, Sunday, like the Jewish Sabbath, is meant to be a day which heals our relationship with God, with ourselves, with others, and with the world. So all you guys that call the Lord's Day, Saturday, the 4th commandment, the Jewish Sabbath, you sound just like the Antichrist. You're speaking just like the devil. You're drinking from the wine of the wrath of her fornication, the false teachings of the little horn Antichrist, the Vatican. This was last year, Thursday, March 30th. Pope Francis has to go to the hospital due to health concerns. 3 days later, he's let go on April 1st, which lands on Saturday, the Lord's Day, also April Fool's Day, a week before last year's Resurrection Sunday. And guess what Pope Francis says when he leaves the hospital? Man, I was there for 3 days. It felt like I died and came back to life. 3 days after leaving the hospital, he says, feels like I was dead and now I'm back to life. 3 days later, landing on the Lord's Day, Saturday, in mockery of God. Revelation chapter 13 verse 3, and I saw one of his heads as it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. Now, this wasn't the deadly wound the Bible was referring to, but definitely a sign and a shadow. But I'm going to link again the Messiah 2028 video down below, and you can watch it to find out what that deadly wound was. Very interesting how he goes to the hospital 3 days later. He says, man, if I was dead, and then he got let go of the hospital on April Fool's Day, which lands on the Lord's Day, Saturday that year, last year, 2023. I believe this was last year. There was a Christian postal worker that said he wanted Sundays off because he said it's the Lord's Day and it's the Sabbath, and the Supreme Court ruled in his favor. Now, this is really important and very significant because we know that next year in 2025, we're going to go into the Great Tribulation, which is 3.5 years long, the latter part of Daniel's 70th week, and we're going to see the mark of the beast, which is the Sunday law. So watch how the Supreme Court is currently set up. 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices are Catholics. Their allegiance is to the Vatican, okay? Not the United States, not for your rights or my rights, but ultimately to the Vatican and then whatever else follows on their list. But this is very important because when the Pope calls for a Sunday law, guess what these 6 Catholics in the Supreme Court are going to do? They're going to listen to the head of their church, because the head of their church is not Jesus Christ, it's the Pope. Then in October of 2023, Pope Francis drops a part 2, Laudato Deum to Laudato Si, calling out the United States as the world leader, saying you guys need to do something about these emissions on a global scale. Pope Francis is also behind the Paris Climate Agreement, where they're trying to find a solution for global warming and all these natural disasters. Pope Francis' solution is passing a Sunday law. And if you haven't heard of Project 2025, go ahead and look it up. It's a 920-page document. And on page 589, it says that we need a Sabbath day of rest, and that day needs to default to Sunday, mandated. To find out what the mark of the beast is, when Daniel's 70th week started, when is the midway point, and when Daniel's 70th week is over, check out Messiah 2028 from Babylon to America. I'll link it below. God is always talking. Are you always listening?